The next step is to add brushes to our motor, and brushes are nothing more than these flexible conductive pieces that are going to allow the motor to spin and be connected to the battery. Just to kind of demonstrate how this works, I'm going to connect one end of the battery to one end of one of the pieces of brass, and I'm going to connect the other end of the battery to the other piece. And so now I have the 6 volts from here to here, and now I can connect to the commutator using these flexible pieces of brass. So let's see if I can make my motor spin now. Okay, so now instead of using the alligator clips as brushes, I'm using 2 pieces of this flexible brass as brushes, and you can see there's a much better contact and it works much better. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just attach these in such a way that I don't have to hold them here like this. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking this piece and I'm just letting it touch the cork or the commutator on the underside. So I'm going to tape it like this, and for this one I'm going to do the same, except this one is going to touch on the top. So one will touch on the bottom and one will touch on the top, and if I have to, I can rotate the cork so that the current changes direction at the right time. So now you can see that I have 2 pieces of brass, one on the top and one on the bottom. Okay, so one is touching the top of the commutator, the other one is touching the bottom, and they're just taped here and here and just kind of folded around my enclosure. And then finally I'm going to make contact way out here, and this is where the battery is going to be connected. Okay, but you can see I need to do some work here because this piece of brass isn't even touching the cork. So there's a fair amount of finesse to this to find the sweet spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect my battery to the 2 ends of the brass like this, and then I'm going to test the motor and try to position the 2 pieces of brass so they make contact, they make good contact with the motor, and I don't have to hold anything. One of the reasons why your motor may stop is if there's too much friction either between the enclosure and the skewer or out here, then it's going to stop. Okay, so every time this coil turns 180 degrees, there's just a tiny little push given to keep it turning. So if there's too much friction or the balance isn't good, then it may stop. Another reason why it may stop is if this brush and this brush happen to be touching the same contact, then you're shorting the battery and there's not going to be any current in the coil. So you want to make sure that when this brush brushes over the commutator and it brushes over from one contact to the other brush needs to be doing the same thing at the same time. And all of this has to happen when the coil lines up with the magnet. So it's going to line up, and then as soon as the magnetic field changes in the coil, this thing's going to start to rotate the other way. So it needs to happen here, and it needs to happen on both sides of the commutator. So you may have to finesse this a bit to find, a good spot or a sweet spot where this is all going to be coordinated together at the same time. The next step is to hot glue the battery pack onto the side of the motor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply hot glue. Notice that the two ends of the battery won't fit, or they're not long enough to touch the brushes. One side is long enough, but this other side won't reach to the other side. So I'm just going to cut a piece of solid wire and extend that black wire. And so I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to use this tool to take the insulation off, a little bit of insulation off on both sides. So you can see, just pull that off. Do that on both sides. Now, the wire that's not long enough, I'm just going to twist these two pieces together. And I need to take some insulation off of this black wire because there's just too much insulation there. And it looks like I just broke the wire. Okay, sometimes it's stranded wire. I think you can see it close up here. So I'm just going to twist those two wires together, and in doing that I'm going to extend the black wire so it'll now be able to connect to. Okay, so I've just extended the black wire, so now it can fit over to this side. So now I've taped the black wire to this end, and obviously I don't want to tape this down because then the motor would always be connected to power. Now there's a lot of ways to make crude little switches, but I'm going to make a switch this way. I trimmed off a little bit of the brass, and I'm going to tape it on here like so. So I'm going to put a piece of tape here, and I'm going to tape it on like this. And then by taking the red wire and sliding it underneath there, I'm creating a little switch. Once again, just take this little wire, give my motor a little push, and away it goes. Look, Mom, no hands.